Okay, guys, we are officially at the end of 2023, and that can only mean it is time to review the top 10 horror films of the year 2023. So let's get into it. I should start off by saying this top 10 list is only my personal opinion on what I enjoyed the most. They're not necessarily the best made movies, in that kind of order. I'm not going for that. I know some of you may see some of the choices and think, well, this movie is clearly a superior film to this, so and so. And that may be. I'm just pretty much going with what I enjoyed the most, and I was like, that was awesome, or that was fun, or what I preferred. So don't be surprised if there's a few where you're going, huh? So it's all personal, and I totally respect everybody's opinions. So, I mean, if you want to give me your top 10 after, I would love to hear it. Okay, so first off, I just want to get out of the way a few of the, shall we say, bigger horror films that were released this year that definitely didn't make my list, that weren't honorable mentions, but are movies that I feel like I do need to mention because they will be on some people's lists and they are fairly popular movies. Movies like, for instance, Renfield. Okay, I'm a big Nicolas Cage fan. I love Nicolas Cage. Okay. Renfield, it just wasn't my cup of tea, I guess. I felt like just overall it was just kind of bad, and I love Nicolas Cage doing, different roles and stuff, but it was kind of, I just wasn't that into it. I didn't think the chemistry was there for the other two main characters either. It just didn't seem, it just didn't flow nice for me, and it was kind of, So, yeah, if you're wondering where that one is, I wasn't big on that one. Another one would be It's a Wonderful Knife. I'm not sure how many of you saw that one, but that was the holiday-themed slasher movie that had kind of mixed reviews, I guess. But when I found out Justin Long was in it, I thought, oh, okay, well, this could be really great. Who doesn't love Justin Long, right? So anyway, I watched it, and for the first, 20 minutes or so, I was intrigued. I thought it was looking like it could really be something cool, and then it just kind of fell on its face and strolled along, and then ended, and you're kind of like, huh. So wasn't a big fan of that one. That was sort of further down the list. As well as I should mention, I did not put The Exorcist Believer really high. However, I was not one of these people that thought it was terrible and said all these horrible things about it. There seemed to be a lot of harsh reviews on that one, and I just didn't think it was warranted because when I went and saw it, I really didn't think it was that bad at all. Like, it was a decent movie. Again, not high up on my scale to make my top 10 or even kind of flirt with an honorable mention, but it was there, and it wasn't a bad movie overall. Like I said, it wasn't terrible. It really wasn't. I think people were really making it out to be far worse than it was. And the other one I wanted to quickly mention was Five Nights at Freddy's. This is another big movie that came out, sort of horror genre as well. I found the movie wasn't too bad. I thought it was all right. It had mixed reviews again, but my biggest gripes with it were the writing. I thought was a little bit on the poor side. Likable characters, but I think it could have done a better job explaining the characters a little bit better or making them intertwine a little bit better with just a little bit stronger writing there, just for a lot of the mainstream folks that don't know the story as well. Like, say, my son loved the movie because he knew exactly what was going on the whole time, and he really enjoyed it. My daughter, on the other hand, not as much. She was sort of on the opposite side of it, but yeah, overall, I thought it was good, but again, not really high enough to go into like an honorable mention slot. And there is one other one that is missing from this list that is on a lot of other lists that I've seen on other folks I follow, their top 10 lists and whatnot as well that I've seen anyway. And I know there's still a few I have yet to watch, but This particular movie made their list, and I only watched it recently because I wanted to make sure I got it in because it seemed to be very popular. And that movie is Sick. Now, it's one that I passed up before and I didn't really remember much about. And then I saw a scene in the movie where this, with the main character, this girl looks, I don't know, kind of like Amber from Scream 5. She is clearly in danger for whatever reason, and she's trying to flag down a car because somebody's trying to kill her or whatever, right? And the lady's wearing a mask and is like, "Do you have a mask? Like, do you?" It was kind of funny in the trailer because it made it all seem a little bit silly because, you know, she's desperate to get away from somebody trying to kill her, and this lady's worried about her wearing a mask at that moment. Whatever. It was just funny, and I remember thinking, oh, I got to check that out sometime, you know. And I never really thought about it much again, and that was it. And I didn't realize it was Sick until I actually watched it this time. And I thought it started off really well. It was, you know, a typical 80s, 90s style slasher. But the more I got into it, the more things started happening where it was like, well, that's silly, and that's ridiculous, and that's absurd, and it just got more and more absurd to a point where I was like, what? Like, the plot was so bonkers for me. It was hard to take it seriously. After that, I was like, really? I guess. And I know, whatever, some people feel that way, I'm sure, because of what they've, you know, just lived all that crap and stuff. So why would they want to watch it, right? But it started off really fun, and I could see how some people would, you know, enjoy it, but I was just like, no thanks. But anyway, here are some of the honorable mentions that didn't make the top 10 but were close, and they are in no particular order. First one is Hell House LLC Origins, Carmichael Manor. Now this movie, and I've seen a few of these Hell House movies, I think there's 4 of them now. But I thought this one was probably the best one since the original anyway. It definitely had a few scenes that were pretty unnerving, kind of like the first one did. However, there were a few actors in this movie that I thought were a little on the not so great side. I don't want to single them out, but there were a couple that stuck out to me that it seemed like overacting and not, it was something I kept noticing, and I normally don't notice stuff like that, so that was something that brought it down a little bit there for me. But I mean, overall, I thought it was probably the second best in that franchise, and a decent watch with a few scares. Okay, another one, of course, is one that came out really early in the year, and I believe there were some pre-screenings and stuff that made it in December, and that is Megan. Now, that was a long time ago when I saw Megan. I've seen it a couple of times ever, and I didn't think it was a bad movie. I did think the Child's Play remake was actually still a little bit better, believe it or not, but I didn't think it was a bad movie. It was something that was right around that 7 out of 10 spot for me, which is pretty much the transition from, you know, watchable to decent movie. You know? Next up in the honorable mentions is Infinity Pool. I know everybody's like, that's not in your top 10. No, it's not that it's not a great movie, because it is, guys. It's a really well done, very cool movie, but my God, it's such a mind screw, you know, that it's a tough watch, you know? It's sort of like The Menu from last year meets like Eyes Wide Shut and meets like Midsummer, you know, where you have almost like this weird cult, but like, you know, this elite thing going on as well, and this weird resort feel of The Menu, and this, it's just super, super strange. So again, well-made movie, but just not something where I'm like, oh, I love that and I got to watch it again and again. I'll probably, you know, you watch it once and you go, oh, that was well done, because it was. You know, I did think Mia Goth's accent was coming and going a little bit. I was wondering why they went with British. But, and I do like her. I know a lot of people are nuts about her and like, you know, she's this new Scream Queen and everything. I've never been like super sold, like wow, but I thought she was really good in Pearl. She was decent in X as well. But I did think she was losing her accent a little bit in Infinity Pool. So, I don't know, I thought Might work better without the accent. So yeah, overall, great movie, but it just wasn't, you know, to my taste to make my top 10, but definitely worth mentioning. It's a very well-made movie. So, all right, and the last honorable mention that I wanted to bring up was The Last Voyage of the Demeter. So this is another one that I watched recently just to make sure that I got out of the way, because I know it was a popular one. I never got to see it, and I wanted to give it its fair chance. I thought that movie overall was really good. I thought it was a little on the long side, but very enjoyable movie, and well acted. But again, a well done movie, and just unfortunately, it just didn't crack my top 10. It was up there, well done, you know. So I just wanted to include it on the honorable mentions, as well as, you know, it's a well done film. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's finally get on to the top 10. Here we go. My pick for number 10 this year was none other than Saw X. Or Saw 10, if you will. Mainly for the nostalgia factor. I really enjoyed it because it was great seeing the pair back together. And seeing a little bit of that backstory. I know it's a bit of a prequel, I guess you could say, but it was a great way of bringing John back, you know. Just great to see them back doing their same old stuff in this prequel form. I know it's a little on the weak side in terms of story, but it was some nice filler, and I'm sure for all of the fans of the franchise, for the most part, I think we all got a kick out of it, and I really enjoyed it, so I had to include it on my list as my number 10. All right, moving on to my number 9. I might be alone on this, but for whatever reason, I watched this movie twice, just to be sure, because my first take on it, I doubted myself a little. I thought, I got to watch it again, because maybe I got the wrong impression, because I was thinking, it's pretty good, you know? And watched it the second time and still thought, no, it's pretty good. I actually like it. And that movie is The Boogeyman. There was just something about this film that I really enjoyed. I thought it was well acted, you know. I didn't have a problem with any of the characters there. The story was strong. And it had kind of a Stranger Things feel to it. I'm not sure how much you guys noticed, but there were definitely some references here and there that made it feel a little that way. Maybe that helped me enjoy it more, but I thought for me, because of what I got out of it, it deserved to be on the list, and I gave it my number 9 spot. Okay, and on to number 8. Now, this one was right out of left field for me, because I watched about 5 of these movies over the course of a couple of days, and this one was one of them. And this is the only one that made it into my top 10. All the rest of them were kind of floating in the middle there somewhere. Anyway, this one is A Knock at the Cabin. So M. Night Shyamalan's film that was on Netflix that I actually put off watching because of some of the reviews I was hearing early on. I thought, I don't feel like watching that. See, for me, my favorite M. Night films will always be, you know, Signs and The Sixth Sense and stuff. You know, it's the alien side, the ghost side of things. Some of the other stuff he's done is cool, you know, like Unbreakable and stuff like that. And I'm just saying that I tend to prefer those, and he really hasn't done a lot of that since, not in that kind of style anyway. So I was a little reluctant to check out A Knock at the Cabin, right? But I'm glad I did before the end of the year here, so I could check it out, because I thought it was very well done. I thought it was well acted. I thought Dave Bautista was fantastic in that movie. I mean, he was excellent. I was impressed by the story, and it was pretty heartfelt too. I remember thinking, wow, this is really deep. Like it was getting to me by the end of the movie. I was like, wow, this is a well done movie, and definitely some horror elements, as most of Night's movies have, of course. But I did want to include it in there. I thought I enjoyed it enough to make number 8 on my list. Okay, so on to my number 7. Now, number 7 for me I think was probably the scariest of all the horror films that I saw this year was for me. And again, I didn't find it super scary per se, but I thought it had some genuinely scary scenes that kind of made you go, whoa, you know, there was a few of those. Not as much as, say, Smile from last year, but I thought Talk to Me was a pretty decent film. It's another A24 movie, and I know some people are put off by them. I'm kind of in the middle with those films because I never really know what I'm going to get because, you know, I was a huge fan of Hereditary. I thought that was absolutely terrifying. One of the scariest movies I'd seen in a long time. It was quite disturbing and emotionally tough to watch, you know. And, you know, a movie like Midsummer, I really hated because I just couldn't get there with any of these characters. It just made absolutely no sense hanging out at this place, and you know, it just completely was not scary at all for me. So, Talk to Me, I really wasn't sure what to think. You know, I saw the previews and it looked like it was genuinely scary, and everybody was saying, "Oh my God, it's so scary and it's so crazy." So I went into it with fairly high expectations, and I think when I came out of it, my bubble was burst a little bit. I thought it would be better than it was, you know, so I think I was extra hard on it at first, but it is a good movie, and it does have some really decent scares in it. So overall, I did give it my number 7 pick here. But for me, it probably gave me the most scares out of any horror movie, which I know is probably surprising to some of you. But, you know, everybody's a little different. But I did think it deserved a spot at least that high because it was the one that at least gave me the most scares. Like I said, Smile did last year for me. And I mentioned that because I never got to see Smile in time for the 2022 list, so it never got included in my countdown. And it would have been my number 3 pick for sure, with only The Black Phone and Terrifier 2 coming in higher last year. But yeah, it would have bumped out everything else there. And for me, it was the scariest of last year anyway. But this year, I gave that honor to Talk to Me, which was only 7 on my list. So I thought there were still 6 other movies that I enjoyed more that weren't quite as scary as that one. All right, so going into number 6, this is one that you may have already been thinking of when I talk about scariest. And you might be surprised that I put it so low on my list when everybody else has it pretty much as their number 1 this year. And that movie is When Evil Lurks. Now this film, for me, was hyped up so huge. And everybody was talking about this before it even came out. I guess there was some early screenings that some of the folks from, say, Fangoria got to see, because I did hear about it in their magazine about how it'll be the number 1 horror movie of the year, and it's amazing, and it's terrifying, and on and on and on and on and on. So I had it really built up, and I had seen a few other reviews before I got a chance to see it, and they were mostly saying the same thing. So I went into this movie thinking this was going to be the one. This is going to be the one that puts those tears in your eyes, almost, where your eyes are starting to well up and you're just frozen with fear watching. Just frozen. That happens so rarely for me, and I was so looking forward to that. I was so hoping. And now, don't get me wrong, I came out of that movie and thought, that was an excellent movie. It's well written, it's well acted, well made. The gore in it, whew, there was some gnarly gore in that. And there were some scenes that made you go, holy shit. But I found they were more surprising scary than they were like terrifying, you know? I didn't get terrifying from that. And I know a lot of people thought it was crazy scary. I didn't find it crazy scary, but I found it really good. Like, it was very well made. But I went in with gigantic high expectations. So again, I felt bubble bursted a little bit, right? But again, it's not that it isn't a better made movie than some of these other ones I'm going to say, because it is. As a movie itself, superior-wise and cinema and all the rest of that, yeah, it's going to be higher rated. But again, this is my personal top 10 list, right, of just what got me going the most. And When Evil Lurks did, and I was impressed, but I still put 5 other movies higher up on my enjoyability scale that I really liked. Okay, and rounding out the top 5 this year for me, number 5 is a little sleeper I didn't even know about called Cobweb. This one kind of just snuck up on me. I didn't even know it was out there. I saw it on my menu. I forget what it was, if it was on Shudder or where I originally saw it. But I wanted to check it out, and I heard that Mike from We Watched a Movie checked it out, and he was recommending it highly. You know, said, check this movie out. It's really good. It had a great Halloween atmosphere, and it absolutely does. It's a beautiful Halloween time film, and it's filled with that Halloween feel, like the beginning of Halloween 4, how you get that feeling. It's shot so cool. It's Halloween, or you watch Trick or Treat, just filled with it. It's maybe not quite that far, but it's got that feel, and it really well acted. Wonderful scenes of dread, and again, just a strong, surprisingly good movie. That's why I put it so high on my list, because it was so unexpectedly solid that I was just like, wow, I was not expecting that. That was a very well done, solid movie that probably deserved like a theatrical release, to be honest. That's what it felt like. But good movie, and yeah, my choice for number 5. Okay, and moving on to number 4. Maybe you guys are wondering how high some of these other ones are going to be that I haven't mentioned, because it's starting to get a little thin on what might be in here or not. But for my number 4 pick, I chose Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. This movie, as silly and ridiculous it is, and not overly scary, I thought it was just an absolute blast. Totally fun to watch. Silly and ridiculous at times, of course, but it was something that I just had a lot of fun with at the theater, you know what I mean? So I enjoyed it that much. I put it this high on the list just because, the fun scale. It's just one of those movies that we were all kind of looking forward to and waiting for a while, once they said they were going to make that trailer from so long ago into an actual movie, because there was enough interest. And lo and behold, he went and made plenty of money on it, and gave people a pretty good time. And I really thought it was a blast. So yeah, for me, it was my number 4 on the year. Okay, and on to number 3. Now, this one was the most surprising one of the entire year for me. I heard nothing about this movie. Absolutely nothing. This is why it was so surprising for me. I ended up seeing that it was out streaming, and I saw it and thought, oh, okay, this looks interesting, but chances are, like most of these alien movies, it's going to probably suck. But what the hell, let's give it a chance anyway, and I turned it on. And this movie is called No One Will Save You. And I thought this movie, by the end of it, I was like, that was awesome. Now, the movie doesn't have a ton of dialogue in it, but highly entertaining, really well shot. The effects with the aliens and everything too, really good. I'm a big fan of Fire in the Sky. That's probably my favorite alien movie of all time. And this one was, I'm just saying, I was impressed by it. I was really surprised at how good it was. Like, when I saw the first scene and the aliens and stuff too, I was surprised, I was like, wow, that looks good. Like, that was well done. I kept getting surprised every time as I was watching it, going, wow. I just was not expecting it to be so good. So for that reason, and that it's been the first alien movie in a long time for me, I really enjoyed it. So I gave it number 3 on my list, just because I had so much fun with it, and it was so well made. And it was, like I said, it wasn't even anything that was on my radar. I didn't even know it existed. So it was this wonderful, nice gift. And I thought it was worthy of my top 3 personally. Okay, on to my number 2 pick, and I'm sure you guys are starting to get an idea of where this is all going, but my number 2 pick this year is definitely Evil Dead Rise. I know you guys are pretty conflicted on this movie. Some of you love it, some of you hate it. For me, there is no bad Evil Dead movie. They are all good in their own way. Even the reboot, although it's not my style, I thought it was a pretty good movie. But Evil Dead Rise, for me, I thought was a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, they took a lot of modern themes, sort of, and threw it in there. I know that was a bit of a gripe with some of you. And I get that, sure, but it wasn't something that was glaring or sticking out to me that I thought was just, needing to be there or whatever you want to say. I thought it was a ton of fun, even though it didn't make a whole lot of sense, and the whole library thing in the middle of the hut, it was really far-fetched that way. But if you put that aside and you get the Book of the Dead involved, it was just a really good time. I know it made no sense that the lady got, possessed as she's doing laundry or whatever. I know, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of spoilerish stuff going on here, but I feel like if you're watching this, chances are you've seen it already. So hopefully I'm not giving too much away, but there are a lot of elements that were pretty silly in it, sure. And it's like Chris Nelson says about, the parkouring zombie thing. That is silly, and I totally get it, but when I got out of Evil Dead Rise, I still thought, man, that was a fun movie. I had a good time watching that, and it is something that I would want to watch again, and have since then. So, for that reason, and that the franchise means so much to me, and that it came out and it didn't suck, it wasn't absolutely awful or anything like that, it was a fun time. I enjoyed it, so yeah, I gave it my number 2 this year. There is only one movie I've seen all year in the horror genre that I felt I enjoyed more than that. And that is my number 1 pick this year, as many of you have probably already guessed, Scream 6. Now, Scream 6, I know some of you are super torn on this, some of you hated it. I get that, and I respect that totally, but for me, Scream 6 is easily a top 3 in the franchise ever. For me, it's next to 1 and 2, which I really love those two. 6, for me, though, showed such a vicious, awesome ghost face with such cool, dark scenes in it. I really love those aspects. I love the subway scene. I thought that was so cool. And, the bodega scene is really strong. Despite its flaws, and there are many in this movie, I know, as well as a killer reveal that, again, was a little on the weak side, and it's hard to believe. I've always had a tough time believing that these are supposed to be the killers when these people are all between, 5'1" and 5'4" and 105 to 135 pounds. They're so tiny, it's hard for me to sell them as somebody who's going to throw someone around, be able to manhandle, wrestle with somebody, and stab them to death, I'm not saying they can't get a stab in or something, you know what I mean? I don't want to go crazy into that. But for me, yeah, when it's the killer is, a relatively delicate young gal, it's a hard sell, or a very small in stature fellow, and not really very physically strong, and he's taking out gigantic dudes who look just about like linebackers. You're going, huh? I get it though, and I've said before, Scream is sort of like a modern whodunit. It's like a Clue movie. You got to figure out who did it and where and with what kind of thing, or who's in on it. And I get that that's part of the amazing side of Scream that a lot of us love, but I did like the realism side of it in the first one and stuff, and the second one where it's, the killers are a little more believable. I know Billy's mom's a stretch, but at least, you have a mom that lost her son. She's just driven to be this, psychotic killer. She's not preoccupied with, college and guys and stuff on the side. And, she really sold crazy well to me. Laurie Metcalf, for me, as I've said in the past, she sold it so well. I would be bothered being around somebody like that seems so unstable and nuts. She genuinely frightened me. So I know it is possible to do with a smaller stature person, but I'm saying you got to sell me better. And a lot of those killers in the later Scream films, they didn't sell me. But 6, it was filled with a lot of tension scenes too, you know, the ladder scene and stuff too, and Ghostface getting really stab happy. It was something to see, you know. And the other impersonations here and there, you know, where there's, you know, in the opening scene and whatever, what I'm talking about. It just hit hard, and I thought they did a great job, and I remember getting out of that movie and thinking, man, that was cool. I don't know about that killer reveal, because that brought it down a little, but I remember thinking, I mean, watching it in the theater, I'm like, this is like an 8.5, this is an 8.5, this is crazy, and the killer reveal, and by the end of it, it was still an 8 for me, which was, that's a great movie. I don't give away many 9s, like I can't even think of any in the last several years. Maybe 1 or 2. It's tough. But anyway, my point is, I thought it was a fantastic movie. It's easily top 3 in the franchise, in my opinion. I wouldn't get mad at somebody saying top 2. Well, I wouldn't get mad at anything. I'm just, that's a saying, of course. But, you know, I wouldn't think it's crazy to put it even in the number 2 spot in the franchise. Personally, I'd have it in my number 3, but there's some people that have it dead last, didn't like it, and that's totally cool too. But just for me, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it had a lot of really cool scenes in it, and easily the one I'd watch over more often. So for that reason, that is this year's number 1. All right, guys, well, that will pretty much do it for my top 10 this year, as well as the honorable mentions and all that other good stuff. Thanks so much for tuning in for all of this. As always, we will see you again in the new year here for another pickups video and some more things that will be coming up for the channel in the future. Hopefully I'll get some cosplay time in as well, but we will see you again for another one real soon. So take care, guys.